Hi, this is Professor Luce, and this is going to be chapter 6 or 10, part 1. There's going to be a second part where we talk about source citations as a separate video. So in this, we're going to talk about first audience adaptation, and we've talked about this to some extent, but it becomes really important with the informative and persuasive speeches because the speech topic that you pick is not just about you, but really it's about the audience. And so in addition to selecting a topic, that's the first part. There are several other factors that go into audience adaptation. You want to provide the audience with new information. Along with that, it means that you may have to explain some terms, hopefully not too many, but you do have to realize that it's probably going to be new information to them. You want to stick to the most simplistic information, the basic information. While some details are great, especially in this class, you're talking about a 3-minute to 5-minute speech and possibly up to 7 minutes. So it's going to be a pretty short speech overall. That's not a lot of time to have a whole lot of depth. When it comes to persuasion, you got to think about where your audience may already stand on a topic and how they may be against it and what that takes to persuade them. You need to build credibility. In this class, building credibility is often done through your sources, but if you have experience in a certain area, of course, you're more than welcome to utilize that in order to gain your audience's attention. When it comes to persuasion, you want to begin with an area of agreement. So for example, if I were to argue that we need to increase tuition, you don't want to start there. Instead, you might talk about, what do you value in an education? And do you agree that we should have a great value for your money? And do we agree that you want the best education possible for that money? Yeah, absolutely. We're all going to agree to that. And from there, you would progress to a persuasive argument. You have to realize your audience is captive, and therefore you need to motivate them to pay attention. And you really just want to stress what's the most important information. Again, you have a very short time frame, so you have to be very precise with what you want to discuss. A target audience isn't just the entire audience in front of you. Instead, as in any situation, you're going to think about a smaller demographic than everyone that's available. You're not going to appeal to everyone. So with persuasion, people may already agree with you. They're not your target audience anymore, right? You don't need to do anything with them. In talking about the target audience, you might think about some things like age, socioeconomic differences, and universal values. All of those things are just some of the things that impact your target audience. You want to think about situational constraints. So where and when is the speech taking place? How long will it be? How many people are in the audience? All of these things affect how you speak. So if you're speaking to 500 people, the obvious things are going to be, one, you're going to be in a huge auditorium, and two, you have to worry about projection. So you're probably going to have things like a microphone, a larger screen with a projector, those sorts of things. If you're outside, you think about outside factors that could impact the audience. It could be heat, could be cold, could be sounds, could be other distractions. And no matter what audience you have, you're probably going to have to deal with some other issues. So even in certain classrooms or other rooms, you have to think about temperature. Time of day matters because as you get closer to lunchtime, guess where your brain's going to go? You're going to be focusing on food. Either you just ate and you're kind of tired, or you haven't eaten yet and you're starving. That's the only thing that you can think about. When selecting a topic, there's a couple of places to start. The first is to think about things that you're interested in, and then why might the audience also be interested in those topics. We're starting the informative speech process. So part of that is thinking, what kinds of things do I know that experts have talked about? Maybe you listen to a really cool podcast. I try to listen to podcasts on the way into work, and sometimes I learn really interesting things. Maybe this is a chance for you to explore a hobby of yours and then learn more about that through a podcast or a TED Talk. Then you can share that information with your audience. So I've listened to hundreds of podcasts on real estate investment, and there are ones that are very specific to college students, whether it's not just college rentals, but how you as a college student could actually pay for your home by living there and renting it out to other people at the same time. So you want to find a topic that's interesting to you, that makes the research and speech writing process and practicing it a lot easier, but you also have to think about what is the audience going to care about and how can you add to their knowledge. So your topic needs to appeal to you, needs to be interesting to your audience, and it needs to be current. Basically, in the past 5 years, you need to be adding new information. Historical objects, I mean, those might be okay, but you have the information you are providing to us from the sources should be definitely from the past 5 years. Topics can't be too simplistic. So, for example, how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, that's not gonna cut it, right? We already know how to do that. Now, if you're gonna tell us about 3 unique twists on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay, fair game, right? Or 3 twists on a grilled cheese, that's fine too. So if you want to take something that's people have familiarity with, but then take us in a new perspective, that's when you come up with a really good topic. A second issue that students often have with informative speeches, especially with a topic, is picking a topic that's too complex for the time frame. You have 3 to 5 minutes. You're not going to teach us how to build a house in 3 to 5 minutes. Now, you might teach us how to build a planner that can go in an apartment, a townhome, etc., without causing any kind of structural damage. That might be feasible in 3 to 5 minutes, but you're not going to teach us about how to build a house. So those topics about like how to change your oil, how to change your tire, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, those are just overused. They're old. They're not something that's going to be unique and really interest your audience. When it comes to persuasive topics, we'll talk about these a little bit more. But things that are overused are like the abortion, death penalty, seatbelt law, smoking. We've heard those topics 100 times. When it comes to supporting materials, we have different types of supporting materials. The book goes into a lot of depth here. I just want to talk about some of these because testimony is really good at persuading your audience. Peer and expert testimony has that connection, and you never know which one's going to be the more persuasive, whether it's peer or experts. With stories, there's both brief and longer stories, and it really depends on how much time you have to speak, but also what are you getting out of the story. And then examples, you want to make sure that they're relatable, and they're usually pretty brief. Okay, I provided a link to these videos overall to the PowerPoint and D2L, so that's going to be a good opportunity to be able to watch these videos. The infomercials that you see over here on the left are really good at providing you with some sort of example of how peer testimony and expert testimony work together to be able to persuade an audience. Some other examples of another infomercial is over here. Again, peer testimony and maybe expert testimony, depending on how you view it, definitely a factor of credibility. And then the Magic Bullet commercial has a combination of peer and experts as well. All right, we're going to come back to this with part 2.